All right, in episode number 75, I want you to fess up. I want to hear from you. Do you have any papers left over from your kids' school days? Now, you might have little kids and you may be collecting their papers every day as we speak, or maybe your kids are grown and they are adults and they're collecting their own kids' school papers. But either way, that is the topic of our podcast today.
You are listening to the Decluttering Club podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Mueller, and it's my mission to equip women to declutter their homes, their time, and their lives so that they have energy for what matters most.
So I used to have a friend and she had 3 children and they were all grown up and they were in their 30s. And she said to me, I have every piece of paper they ever brought home from school. And it's all nicely organized. It's all in boxes in the attic. And that was all the report cards. It was all of the honor roll certificates and the pictures that they drew when they were in kindergarten. She said, I have all of it and I don't regret it for a second. And I was like, good for you. If you are intentionally keeping these things and if you do not have a problem with the consequences that they have created, then I'm in. Less stuff, more life. If that is more life for you, then amazing. But most of you are telling me that this is not creating more life for you and you love these things, but it's creating a huge burden, or it has created a huge burden, and you are really, really struggling with it. The thing about papers with children is that they are constantly creating new papers. There's more paper every day that's coming home with your kids. And so if you don't have a system that is going to serve you, then you will by default be drowning in papers. It is a little bit easier these days because I think there is a lot of stuff online, especially as they get older. There's really not a lot of paper coming home with my high school kids. So that does help quite a bit, but it doesn't help when they're little. It doesn't help when they're drawing pictures and practicing handwriting and doing a spelling test and things like that. So here is the question I want you to ask yourself when it comes to all of these papers. And again, this can apply whether you have fresh papers that came in the door this morning, or whether your papers that you have been collecting and saving, whether you've had them for decades. It doesn't really matter because the question is the same. Why are you saving the papers? This is not meant to be a judgmental question. This is not like, what is wrong with you? Why are you saving the papers? That's not where we're going here. We don't work that way. You all know that. But the question is meant to be like curiosity. Like, why am I saving these papers? What is the reason behind it? What do I want to get out of these papers? And everybody has a reason, a purpose for doing something like this. It could be that you think I'm supposed to keep them. It could be they're really, really special to me. They're really important to me. My child spent time on this. And so I'm keeping the papers to show how much my child means to me. You might say, well, I can't throw them out or I can't recycle them. That would be like throwing out their art. It would be like disregarding the work that they put into these things. So it's good to know, why are you saving it? And I encourage you to write this down, as I want you to ask yourself, are you actually accomplishing that purpose by keeping the papers? So if you say, I want to show my child that I really value the work that they put into this art or to their schoolwork or whatever, are you doing that? Is it working? Is this a good way to demonstrate I value your hard work? And you might think, well, yeah, duh. But I want you to think a little deeper, because you probably keep the piece of paper and you put it in a box and now it's there with 10,000 other pieces of paper. So is that a good way to show that you are valuing that work? And when you think about it, a lot of you are going to say, not really. Like, how is it valuing this work, this idea, this creativity, this effort? How is it valuing this if I'm putting it in a giant box with a whole bunch of other papers and it's just sitting there and I have no intention of opening that box again? Is that valuing that work? No, it's not. We're not connecting the dots. So we think if I keep this, then it means this other thing, but we're missing that connection. And when we think about it, we realize, oh no, I'm not actually accomplishing the purpose that I set out to do. So then I want you to ask yourself, how else can I accomplish this purpose? what are some other ways that I could still honor this desire that I have to show love for my child or to honor their work or whatever? What are some other ways to do this? And this is where it gets really exciting because there's so many ways that you can do this and so many ways that are so much more effective at getting this done that you're not currently doing. And so I have a couple ideas for you to consider. You might decide to display some of these important papers. Maybe you hang the art project on the wall or on the refrigerator. You hang up the spelling test that they did really well on or the perfect attendance certificate. You display them. Now that is so much different than tossing them in a box and letting them get piled up over time, isn't it? Now we are honoring that work. This is really, really exciting. And kids love to see their work on the wall. Now, maybe if your kids are adults, you probably don't do that. But if you do still have kids at home, this is a really fun way to honor their work. Now, the thing about this is that you cannot hang up every piece of paper that they bring home. We all know this, and you may have started by doing this, but then sooner or later you run out of space. And so what do we do in that situation? Well, we've got to play favorites. And this is such a valuable thing to do. And so what do I mean by playing favorites? What I mean is that you want to pick, or maybe you have your child pick, you want to pick the 1 or 2 or 3 papers that are the most meaningful to you at that point, and you put them on the wall. And the rest, you're going to let them go. Because here's the thing. If we want these things to be special, then we have to play favorites. If we want the artwork to be treasured and valued, then we cannot keep every piece of art. We have to play favorites. If you imagine a museum, museums employ curators. And curator is somebody who picks out the things that are going to be displayed in the museum. It's the curator's job to decide this piece of art is going to be on display and this piece of art is going to be on display. And then the rest of them are going to go back in the archive. And some of them won't even ever see the light of day. Some of them, they just pass on by. We want to play favorites with this work. I know a lot of people don't understand the difference between playing favorites with some artwork and playing favorites with your kids. These are not the same things. So if you say, this art that you did on Tuesday, this is like, I love this. This is really fun. Let's put this on the wall. It doesn't mean that you love your child any less because you didn't display Wednesday's project. Playing favorites with artwork or with school papers does not mean that you're playing favorites with your kids. Of course, we're not going to do that, but I think we don't really know the difference. And we think, again, that when we pick 1 or 2 or 3 things that are our favorite or that are a meaningful example, that it means that we don't care about the other papers. And this is not the truth. That's not what it means. All it means is that these are the ones that we have selected to be on display. Now, the thing about papers and projects, it's all a practice. So if your child is drawing a picture every single day, or maybe they're drawing 10 pictures every single day, or maybe they did 30 years ago when they were a toddler, that is what we call practice. And there's a difference between practice and a finished product. And this is really, really useful when we make this distinction. So we want to do the practice, but we also want to be willing and we want to be open to like letting that practice go. If we think we have to preserve every paper that comes our way, then there's going to be a lot of pressure on that particular day, on that particular piece of paper to be like worthy of saving. And the truth is they're not all worthy of saving. They're just not. And so when we are willing to let some of them go, in fact, let the most of them go, then it frees us up, or it frees your kids up from the perfectionism of having to produce something that's worthy of saving. You see how that works? We don't want to encourage perfectionism in our kids and in ourselves. We don't want to do that. And so it's important that we are willing and open to letting things go if they're just not quite what we wanted. There's so much freedom when you're willing to do this. So we want to practice that freedom. We want to show our kids we don't have to keep it all. That means you're free to experiment and to play. And you don't have to worry that it's going to be preserved forever and ever and ever. Like, that's not good for anybody. I have another shift that I want you to consider as you are now recycling these things. Let's say you're like, sounds good. I can try this. I'm willing to recycle some of these papers. But then you stop and you get stuck. And you think, oh no, again, it feels like I am discrediting or making a statement that I don't care about the work that my child did. And what I want to offer to you is that's not what it means. All it means is this is a piece of paper. It has some marks on it, and it's time to recycle it and let it go. It doesn't have to mean anything about your child. Your child is not in that piece of paper. Their heart is not in that piece of paper. They spend time with that piece of paper temporarily, but they are still who they are, fully formed, complete, and independent. And they don't need the paper. They didn't leave a little piece of themselves behind in that paper. And so letting that paper go doesn't have anything to do with your love for your child or who they are or the value of their work. It's just paper. And we really want to see it as just paper when we are recycling it, because if you look at it as just paper, now you can absolutely let it go. It's very easy to recycle a piece of paper. And when we think about this artwork, this is not artwork anymore. This is just paper. And this kid, this person is done with it. And I'm done with it. And we're ready to move on and let it go. It's a very, very healthy way to relate to your work. Highly encouraged. The other thing that this does is, especially if you still have kids that are younger, if they participate in this and if they get used to this will become normal for them. This will become muscle memory for them. We do not want our kids to, again, have that pressure to produce something every single day that is worthy of keeping. We want them to be willing to experiment. We want them to be willing to say, yeah, I'm done with this now. I'm ready to let it go. You see how healthy that is? So we don't want to do this in secret. Do not do this when your kids are not looking. Do not hide it in a black trash bag. That is, number one, that is saying, oh, my kid can't understand this. It's also saying, oh, I'm going to kind of lie to my kid. I hope they don't notice. I do not recommend that. It does not set them up for success as an adult. Instead, I want you to go to them and say, hey, let's find our favorites. Which one should we hang up on the wall? And you can go through that process, help them decide which one did you pick? Why did you pick that? What do you love about this particular piece of paper? That's a really great discussion to have with them. And then the rest of it goes in the recycling. This is what we do with paper that we are done with. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And we can be a little bit less precious about these papers. And again, then we get to play favorites. We get to enjoy the things that are important to us. We no longer have this terrible burden. We free up space and all kinds of good things happen. This is less stuff, more life in action, my friends. It really is. And it can be really, really powerful when you're willing to make this shift and try it out. It might take a little practice at the beginning. This might be kind of challenging, but I promise you, you will get used to it. You just keep reminding yourself, these are just pieces of paper. That's all they are. And they don't have to be anything more or anything less unless we start telling a different story about them. Give this a try. Let me know how it goes. I'm super curious to hear. Hopefully you can get rid of boxes and boxes of kids' paperwork after you've listened to this podcast. I'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.
That's all we have for you today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. It would really help us to get the word out. And if you'd like to continue your decluttering journey with us, find us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Decluttering Club, or on our website at thedeclutteringclub.com.